Good morning, everyone. Rachel here from rachthestamper.com, and today I'm going to show you this really pretty card that I created. We're actually going to update this. I did this when this first came out, and I just never actually made a video for this card. So I'm actually going to do this with some updated colors, but this is a gorgeous stamp set and a die set. It's actually two different things. It's Nature's Harvest. Now, I did not use any of the stamped images for this. I used the dies solely for this. So I'm going with the fact that this, I know, has been called so many things, but we're going to kind of make it more of a Maryland style card, and we're going to make this into a sort of a Black-Eyed Susan. So what I did is actually use this die, and I cut this from masking paper. So what we're going to do is we're going to overlay it, we're going to lay it, and we're going to update this. So instead, this was actually done with Cinnamon Cider, if you remember that color. It was a fun one. Cinnamon Cider, Mango Melody, and then I believe I used just thick white cardstock for the base layer here. But what we're going to do is we're actually going to change to shimmery white cardstock. So we're going to have a basic black base. Daffodil Delight is going to be the layer. This is 4 by 5 1/4. Then I have a piece of shimmery white cardstock, which is really pretty. It's very difficult for me to actually show you the shimmer on here, but it's got an iridescent sparkle to it. It's really, really pretty. 3 3/4 by 5. So I'm going to move these on the side because we don't need these. And I'm going to kind of follow along with this card for my inspiration, but it's probably not going to be exact. So basically what I did is I took this die and I cut this from release paper, or I'm sorry, from masking paper, which has a release on the bottom. And we're going to start with that. This is a really nice die set that goes along with the Nature's Harvest bundle. I don't believe you can get them as a bundle any longer. I think they are separate, but... So what we're going to do to begin is we're going to take the release paper off of our die, and just like so. And what it is, the masking paper is kind of off of our die. We're going to take the release paper off of our masking paper. So this is kind of like sticker paper, if you can imagine. So I'm just kind of eyeballing my placement. It doesn't need to be exact, but I think I need to move it up a little bit so this isn't hanging off the bottom. So let me start with that. And excuse my froggy voice. Unfortunately, I just got over the flu, which for anyone who hasn't had the flu in a while, it still is horrendous. Absolutely, absolutely just horrendous. I was talking with someone today, and, you know, not to get on the subject of sicknesses, but, you know, getting sick, like upset stomach, vomiting, is the worst. But I gotta say, the flu, oof, this was far worse than that. So what you're going to do is you're going to really press this down because you want to make sure that you get a nice adhesion to your base card, because we're going to start off with blending. Now, since I'm doing this with yellow, so with Daffodil Delight, versus doing this originally with Mango Melody, I did use mango, and this one, it to me looks like I used crushed curry, but I want this to be brighter, so I'm going to go ahead and stick with Daffodil Delight. And to start this, oh look, I inked this up, so that should be nice and juicy, which is good. To start this, you're going to grab a blender brush, okay? So what you're going to do is you're just going to put some ink on here. And I want to make sure this is nice and blended. And let me pull my, oh, what did I do with it? It's got to be here somewhere. Here it is. I'm going to pull out my ugly scrap to work on this, since I have a nice piece to use. So I'm going to pull out my ugly scrap, and I'm just going to blend off to make sure the color is not too harsh. So I just want to blend kind of around where this flower is. So the cool part about this is you can make it as much or as little as you'd like. And you kind of want to center your blending to the middle. And then you're going to use your imagination really for the rest of it. So it's going to be up to however you want it to look. But the other thing that's neat is that you can reuse this mask many, many times. So you don't need to throw it away once you've done it one time. You can use it for multiple cards. The only thing I would say is just to let the mask dry a little bit, but you can definitely use it more than once. So that's probably a pretty good concentration. Now, the other thing I'm going to do, because I want the card to stand out like it's in the foreground of the picture, so I'm actually going to also apply the splatter prior to removing my mask. Okay, so again, that was Daffodil Delight. Just going to close that up. I'll leave this here just in case I need that again later. And then the splatter, I'm trying to make it somewhat complementary. So since prior I did this with cinnamon cider, I'm going to do this with black. So I want to move this out, so I don't want to ruin it. I'm going to slide this over just a little bit because I have another, probably easier if I just move these little bits of another project I'm working on out of the way. And I'm going to take my, I'll slide this back over so it's in screen. I'm going to take my basic black marker, the brush tip end. And what you do is you just take the lid and you take the brush tip and you kind of flick it. But you do want to stay close so you don't get it everywhere. So I'm just going to flick. And this also depends on how juicy your markers are. This one's probably pretty dry. And I might have to actually get a different one. I've had that one forever and a day. Let me try a little basic gray. So depending on how wet your marker is how much you'll get. We used to have apparently this little tool that hooked onto the end and psh, psh, psh. The other thing you could do if you did want it a little bit darker. So I'm going to show you just what I mean. So you could take your basic black refill ink. And you could, or a black refill ink, I don't think we have basic black necessarily. You could dip it and flick it that way. So I don't want it to be super duper dark because black definitely can become a little bit overpowering, but I'm going to bring this up so you can see it. There is a nice bit of splatter effect on there. If you want anything larger, the other thing you could do, as I said, is you could take a little bit of re-inker. It doesn't need to be a lot, but I'm just going to show you what I mean. You could take a little bit of re-inker. That's plenty. And you put a teeny bit, where is my spritzer? Teeny, and I mean, when I say teeny, I mean like teeny bit of water. Okay, that was probably not even a full spritz. And then I'm going to just take my marker, kind of let it absorb a little bit of this. Now this is going to be really, really goopy, so I'm not going to do this directly to my card at this point. I'm going to show you what I mean. So I'm going to, since I have this here and it's fairly wet, I'm going to just take my little towel that I usually clean stuff up with and just get the edges because I don't want it to be sopping. Okay. So then if you were to flick, you can see you'll get a more of a splattery image. So let me show you what I mean. So we're on the back. And you can tell because I'm right-handed, all my splatters went that way. So I'm going to attempt to go this way. We'll see if it works. Ooh. That looks good. That's plenty. So you have a much more vivid splatter. So you could also, if you wanted to, since this marker is pretty dry, I could probably let this set and it will absorb some of it. So if I needed to use it again for something else, you can see it's definitely pretty dry. So it's sucking it up. You are also not necessarily by Stampin' Up's standards, but because markers are consumable items, they do dry out. But you can actually pull out the nib. And if you search back in my videos, I'll see if I can find it. There is a way that you can pull out the nib with tweezers. It's actually pretty simple. And you can put a drop or so of re-inker. You definitely don't need a lot, but you can put a drop or so of re-inker in there and it will refill your tip again. So I'm going to just set this for 1 second with my heat tool. I'm going to just dry it before I pull that off. Give me 1 second. I did not have this plugged in. I'm just going to heat this just to make sure it's fully dry before we peel the mask. Now, honestly, had I not added that second layer of black, I wouldn't have even heat set it because the gray was pretty dry. So what you're going to do is you're going to just take a little tool, whatever it is you have handy. Just using one of my old paper piercers. And honestly, this even in and of itself is really cool because you do have the negative. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this and I'll just put this, so there was my other one, inside my stamp case so I can reuse this again. Now this one has been on here for some time, I mean, since I made that other card, which is a pretty long time. I will say the edges are a little bit curled up, but I bet if you put this on here and used it again and you flattened it out really well, you probably could use it. But the tips are curling a little bit. So as long as you use these again, the mask, probably within, I'd say a week to 2 weeks, you shouldn't have any problem with reusing your mask. So the only thing you need now is you kind of have to pay attention to how you have your idea of how you want your flower to look. Okay, so this is kind of, I won't say it's open for interpretation, but it really kind of is. So what I'm going to do is I'm not going to make that center too black because it'll be really hard to distinguish. But what we're going to do is I'm going to start with, I have my basic gray. Oops, I want to give that a bit of a bigger squeeze. Make a little pull in the center. All right, so I have basic gray ready. And I'm going to use, again, Daffodil Delight. But I'm probably going to also bring in, there we go, that looks good. I'm also going to bring in one other color because I do need a little bit darker of a point for it. So I think I'm going to go with Mango Melody. Let me just squeeze this. We have a little centerpiece there. That looks good. So we're going to do that. And then greens. So for green, I think I'm going to go with something a little bit brighter. So I'm going to have a little bit of Granny Apple, which we have plenty in there. And then maybe for a slight contrast, a little bit of Old Olive. Okay, so I'm going to start with my flower portion. And to do this, all you really need is either one of two things. You can either use a little paintbrush, if that's something that you want to work with, or you could use a little dried out Wink of Stella brush, which kind of gives you a bonus that it gives a little bit of shimmer as well. So I'm just going to pick this up, pick up my ink, and I'm going to start by drawing in some flower petals. Remember, they don't really need to be perfect because this is just whatever you want to make of your card. So just kind of go with your petal shape. Bring in a little bit of that darker. Okay, so I'm kind of trying to create what petals would look like. Going down to the edge. Trying not to touch the black so much because if you do touch the black, it will reactivate the ink and you don't want it to smudge, that's for sure. I'm just going to wipe this off on my scrap paper, pick up a little bit of that mango, and then I'm going to bring in a little bit of just darker spot up here by the cone portion of the flower. And then just kind of create some darker edges here. Kind of decide what side you want your shaded side to be. And just bring a little bit down here at the bottom. Probably got a little bit heavier with my black than I should have, but and a little bit here. So you can always kind of leave these out for what you want it to be later. So I'm going to leave this here for now. And I'm going to just wipe this off. Now I am going to go ahead and grab a completely different one for my darker color. And I do happen to have, I got this somewhere, so this kind of already is dark, but this is a Wink of Stella black. So it's already going to have a little bit darker color to it. You can get these on Amazon. And then I'm going to just bring around my, might be a little bit too dark. I might have to use something a little bit lighter. This will be nice for the merging of the two though. Yeah, this is a little bit too dark to use for the painting. So I'm actually going to go back to a different... I definitely have many, many, many dried out Wink of Stellas. So this is a regular one. Give me 1 sec. I'm just going to... don't want it to be too dark. Oh, that's much better. And by adding those little brush strokes, it's kind of giving you some depth to this. Now, another thing you could do with this, you could even do this with your Stampin' blends, because there's no ink to really smudge, so you wouldn't have any issues with that whatsoever. I'm actually going to probably go in and do you a little bit of fill-in with that, but there's that. I do apologize. I feel like I keep saying we need a mute button on YouTube. Would be a fabulous idea. Could mute our coughing. Okay. All right, a little bit of Granny Apple Green. And I'm going to bring in a little bit of dark with some Old Olive. Just a little bit of depth to this side. You want to just erase that white line there. Okay, so I think this needs just a slight bit of outblending, and I feel like I need a medium color, so I'm going to bring in a little bit of Pear Pizzazz, but I just want to clean this off really well. What I'm actually going to do is I'm going to put a little bit of water on my block just to kind of lighten this, wet it. There we go. And that's another way to really lighten your tones, if you ever needed to, is actually you could add some water. So spray a little bit of water into your tray, and it'll definitely lighten up the hue. And it kind of helps to blend the colors a little bit, so you can see they're blending just a little bit better. There you go. That looks way nicer. That was just such a slight bit of Pear Pizzazz, but just with that addition of water, really, really helped that. So, again, that was Granny Apple, Pear Pizzazz, and Old Olive. I'm just going to wet this and wipe it. And I'm going to do that one more time. Don't need that anymore. I'm going to actually do it a little bit more with the mango. Okay. And I'm going to pick this water up again and just kind of swish in here. Makes it just a little bit more movable. And then just pick up the same thing again, just to add those little petal-esque layers to your flower. Give it a little bit more depth and dimension, and just blending this top to kind of blend out that white. And really, with using the, I want to do one more thing here. Just kind of dipping straight into my ink. I'm just adding in some kind of like flower-ish streaks. And sometimes they have those dark streaks of color. And as this does dry, it definitely will change the appearance of this flower. Okay, so kind of depends. Now, you can see when I colored this one in, I didn't do quite as good of a job of going to the edge. It gives like a light look behind it, which is really neat. However, on the same effect, it depends on what you really want from it. The way they are going to dry, which this one is not fully dry, so I might actually hit this with the heat tool just to dry it a little bit, will change the appearance of it, okay? So I'm just going to wipe this off. And then these are, again, mostly dead Wink of Stella pens, which what I mean is that they really don't have any more ink in the end of them, but they're still so good for painting with because they have such a nice, precise brush. I'm going to hit this one more time, just to make sure it's fully dry before we finish the card. And it definitely considerably lightened up that cone portion of the flower. Okay. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my, I think, light smoky slate, because I think that's going to be dark enough. And I'm just, it's my Stampin' Blend light smoky slate, and I'm just going to add in some dots. Nope, that's a little too light. Let's go with light basic black. Dark basic black is really difficult to work with, in my opinion, because it's almost so dark. So I'm just going to add in just some little random spots, because these tend to have a ton of little, I don't know what you call them, if they're tips, and I kind of almost want to go out just a little bit just to give the flower a teeny bit of depth to the edge of it, if that makes sense. Okay, and then the other thing you can do if you want, just kind of dependent on what you want to do, is you could even go with your dark Daffodil Delight. Again, same thing, you want to use the bullet tip, and you could add in just a few little touches of color. Doesn't need to be anything super specific, but there you go. I think that looks really, really nice, just like that. Okay, so again, obviously very old videos, so this is a really old ribbon that's retired. So I'm going to see what else I have. And remember, when you use your blends, it does bleed through to the other side, even though you're using regular ink as well. So just kind of keep that in mind. We're going to fold our base. We're definitely going to need a white panel on the inside of this. I have a whole lot more of these cut. I have to trim this down. So we're going to make this, just giving this another second to just dry back a little bit. 4 by 5 1/4. Okay, that'll be our inside. We're going to stamp just a little something on the inside there. And I'm just checking out my ribbon to see what we have that might look really pretty, because I like the thinness of this, which is great, but could use maybe just something else a little bit to it. And I know sometimes these contrasty colors might look great. I almost think what this would look like. This is actually a petal pink. Kind of brings a little bit of a lightness to it. I like that. So we're going to do that. So I'm going to go ahead and mount this directly. And if you don't like petal pink, you could go with a tan. Another one, I don't know if we still have this one current, but if you have it, that white crinkled seam binding ribbon was really pretty. You could actually use your Stampin' Blends and dye that gray. So let me see what this looks like. Just going to bring this across. You don't want to pull too tight when you're doing these, because it will bow your card, which you don't really want. Pull that through, just make sure it's nice and straight, tight. Hold on. my bow. I haven't tied any bows on video lately, so it's showing. You haven't tied bows on video, and it shows. So I'm just trying to hold that flat while I'm tying so I don't pull the cardstock. There you go. All right, that looks pretty. Just gonna snip that and snip that, and I'm gonna just slide this, bring it in just a little. Okay, now this is a little bit thicker of a bow, so you're probably going to need just a little bit extra when you put this through the mail, unfortunately. But just because to that point, I'm going to go ahead and pop these up on dimensionals because we're already going to be going a little bit above with our postage anyway, so might as well bring the whole card up a level. So I'm just going to put some dimensionals onto the back of this, trying to make sure that I balance them out. I think that should be pretty good. But just balancing out the dimensionals, that way your card doesn't look wavy. And I want to make sure this is kind of on the same plane there. There we go. Just set this on the front, just like so. There's that. And we're going to do the inside panel. So for the inside, we're going to actually just do a little bit of stamping. So what we'll do is, just for something super simple, I'm going to use this little flourish of color, and then we're going to stamp this in black on top of it. Let me just grab 2 of those, 1 and 2, put this back, and I'm just going to stick with the same thing. So we'll do a little bit of Daffodil Delight, but I don't want it to be super dark. So yes, I'm definitely going to stamp all first. Put that down on the bottom here with that. And I'm going to stick with Memento for the outline. Just want to make sure it was nicely inked before I stamp it. There we go, for the inside, and mount that in here. And then you could add whatever sentiment you'd like to this. Sometimes I do leave them sentimentless, just because you never know what you might need it for. But really, really pretty card. Again, a little bit of an updated palette, since a few of those colors that I originally used are no longer in. This in color has definitely retired since then. Let me just give this another nice press. And we will be having some new in color, so just keep that in mind. It won't be long until we'll be having a bit of a catalog changeover, which means that a lot of the colors that we had will no longer be available. So we have several colors that will be retiring. Fresh Freesia, Pale Papaya, Soft Succulent, Evening Evergreen, and Polished Pink. They will all be on the retiring list eventually. So if those are some of your favorite colors, you might want to start stocking up on stuff before they actually announce that they're going to be gone. I want to thank you so much for joining me today. If you're new to my channel, welcome, and thank you very much for being here. If you haven't already, I would love for you to subscribe to my channel. Just click the subscribe button. Make sure you hit the bell for notifications, so the next time I post a video or do a live, you'll be notified as soon as I get on there. If you haven't already, I would love for you to leave a comment. Tell me what you think about these cards. Which one was your favorite, the original or the new updated black version? Thanks so much for watching. I hope you have a wonderful day.